what we're going to do this week is follow up on a couple of questions around the frustrations that some of the past alliance leads have, and how do I convince the internal sales team that AWS is worth it? Why does AWS matter to me? So what
Yep.
are your thoughts?
We take a step back, which is you got hired, you're one of one. The company made some goal, like we talked to before, like indirect revenue. Maybe the partnership with AWS makes sense, and now you're the alliance leader that's been hired.
Hmm.
And so I guess the question is always you can think of the three C's, the build, market, and sell. Those are usually three lines of business, might be the CIO, CTO, might be the CMO, might be the sales team. So each one of those different conversations, different goals. But let's just assume we got here because we report in some function under go to market or under the chief revenue officer. With that being said, probably our goals hopefully are not around source business from AWS, but maybe that evolves over time. But revenue is probably important, the acceleration of revenue or whatever. And we also know, I call it the PAL currency, the partner alliance leader currency is pipeline revenue and marketplace revenue,
Yeah.
which those are both revenue, but bonus points for marketplace revenue. So, as an overlay, as someone in this organization, I don't own the pipeline, I'm not selling the deals, but I need that currency to go foster and build that trust and that partnership with AWS. I want to meet the CRO and I want to interview with the CRO, which is usually a very difficult interview, but at least at my level, get to the highest side of the sales leader that you're allowed or you can get to. But really, what you're after, and a question that I ask, even if I know the answer, is you ultimately are the backstop to pipeline and sharing pipeline with our partner, AWS. You want to hire me to be successful in this job, but I mentioned the PAL currency thing. I just need to make sure that any rep, anything, like once a deal is qualified and it's in AWS's world, one of their accounts, we're allowed to share it for co-sell. And I want to get a thumbs up from that. Like at no point is a rep going to cry or say, why did you do that? And the second thing is, I just asked this. Instead of us looking at marketplace and saying, why marketplace? I want you and the finance team, I'll need your help, but I want every deal to be looked at, why not marketplace? And if I have your commitment that you're bought in, you want this partnership and all of its goodness, then I want, when we're in deal reviews, forecast calls, I want to know why this deal can't go through the AWS marketplace. And that's a simple change, but watch how much that dramatically changes stuff.
You are actually going to embed AWS and that marketplace functionality into the workflow. So, for
Yeah, it's going to be
example,
part of the DNA of the go-to-market team.
exactly. So, every single opportunity is going to be synced into ACE. So, you need a commitment. How are you going to do that? Are you going to use a third party? If you're using MEDDICC, for example, if you're using a framework, when you actually talk about the 2Ds within MEDDICC, that is the paper process. Oh, we can speed that up through AWS. So your sales leaders should
Yeah.
embed that talk track
Yeah.
with their sales team. So there is a process piece so you can hold people accountable to the standards.
I usually ask alliance leaders, do you know your top 10 sellers? Now, if you only have 10 sellers, do you know your top three?
It's creating a champion, right?
100%. If I'm going to go convince anyone that this is good for them, it's going to be the one that the other 90% of the sales teams look up to. And then immediately sellers have FOMO, fear of missing out. And right after that, my team or myself, calendars are starting to get booked. People are asking for, hey, let me understand more about that.
I always ask, how are the sales reps comped? Firstly, you also need to be comp neutral when you're
Yeah,
going through
of course.
marketplace, but it's also that understanding what are the pipeline goals? What are
Yeah,
the target goals? What is the
yeah,
focus, the ICP? The first thing I do is I understand their accounts. And then I
yeah.
sit down with them and say, look, these are the ones I think we can actually benefit. Let me set up the call. Let me run the call. Let me show you how you engage with AWS and not just ask, what are you going to do for me?
Yeah.
Utilize a third party tool So I
Okay.
basically have insights, but because I'm syncing all the opportunities over to ACE, I use
Yeah.
that propensity to buy information as well to complement what I know from third-party sources as well.
ACE is designed for qualified pipeline. Tackle does have a way that I can take all of my accounts
Yeah.
and it'll show me the propensity for that account to buy through a marketplace and which marketplace. I'm with you. I've used that. I've used things like Crossbeam. I have used Sixth Sense and ABM tools. I
Expenses,
have used technology upstream from my CRM and upstream from pipeline, which pipeline I can send to ACE, account mapping and account whatever. That might be hard if you're a startup partner, you got 10 customers, AWS doesn't know who you are. Like that's a really hard conversation to get into, right? The truth is, I usually ask first, do you have any existing customers where there's a renewal or expansion? Because I'm thinking that is honestly the lowest hanging fruit. And I can immediately put that into ACE. That conversation for co-sell it's not a hard conversation. I'm not really asking for anything because I already have a customer and we're either working on a renewal or we're working on some kind of expansion. Easy is always renewals.
Yeah.
Second easy is a qualified stage two, stage three, stage, whatever it is in your sales force, some qualified sales opportunity where you know the six most important things that AWS wants to know about, like that's second. And then third is, yeah, I'm chasing something in a net new account. I'm fishing.
So how do you handle the CFO turning around and saying, no, you're not touching my renewals because now I'm dropping that revenue
Yeah,
by 1.5%.
that's a great question. I don't always win. I don't always win that
I know.
conversation. I found this at one of the last companies. I
Yeah.
was trying to figure out why the CSM team that handled our renewals was adverse to selling renewals through the marketplace. And it turned out when I got under their goals, they saw, let's say, the 1.5% renewal through the marketplace as churn revenue in their goals. And the truth is, this is a CFO level conversation. Not every company and the VP of finance, they don't always treat marketplace listing as a sales expense. Sometimes they treat it as a cost of goods sold.
Yeah.
And to answer your question about the CFO, part of convincing them that this shouldn't be looked at as cost of goods sold, the team shouldn't be penalized for this behavior, is actually pointing them to the other benefits of the marketplace that they might not be aware of. Making flexible payments, like quarterly payments or monthly payments, like we did actually penalize the sales team for that behavior, right? They got paid 90% versus 100% of their quota. But even the sales teams, look, I'd much rather get 10K a month for this deal to close rather than losing the 120K deal up front.
Yeah.
By shifting that to AWS and AWS doing all of that, and we got mailbox money ACH'd into our bank account, they also handled taxation. They withheld taxes, handled taxation. We also sold into markets where we didn't have necessarily a legal entity or the ability to sell. We had resellers, but resellers are a lot more expensive than the marketplace.
They care about closing deals, but
Yeah.
closing deals is an outcome. And the number one thing for me is around that pipeline and sales cycle. The biggest challenge I always see is procurement and legal. How can I remove the procurement friction? How can I remove the legal friction?
Why would the sales team at AWS help you or care about any of that stuff? Like, why do you think that they'll lean in and they'll agree to these things that you're talking about? Why is it good for them? Because that's partnerships 101 is trust and win-win, right?
Yeah.
The goal is to accelerate our revenue. It's not to create net new revenue through account map, this other stuff. We're not there yet,
No.
but we already have a customer, we have a renewal. Let's make sure that our win rate goes up, like the chance of churn goes down with our friends at AWS. What ends up happening on those calls is what you realize is even if this is our customer and it's been our customer for years, we only know this much about the customer. The AWS sales team, the SA, the AE, sometimes the TAM, man, they know all kinds of things going on in that account. And then I'm just basically asking them, what's the harm? Let's give it a shot.
The biggest people in the room are the C level, right? The CRO.
Yeah.
And I always see that how shall I put it, the elevation of their career actually being aligned with AWS is very powerful. And the opportunities to be able to stand on stage at certain points with AWS, with the certain leadership, that does a lot to elevate that C-level's career. But then also
Yeah.
that cascades all the way down. So you have pre-sales, SAs, sales that can go up and talk about case studies with the biggest player in the market.
The truth is, I don't believe that an AWS partnership can be successful unless the executive team is bought in, leaned in. I actually see this more as like positive, neutral, and negative. I actually don't need everyone to be positive. I want them to have a sense of prove it to me first, but they can't be negative. And honestly, the most important is the CEO, the CRO, the CMO, the CFO, and they only take their direction from the CEO. But if the CEO is not bought in on why or that this relationship is important for us as a company, it's going to be really hard to get everyone else to at least be neutral.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Thank you very much. As always,
Yeah,
we'll definitely
always
do
fun.
this again. Thank you.